Now the fun begins.
Richard.
Stop! You violated the law.
Welcome back to another episode of the Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox Game Pass, and of course PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversation around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So be sure to subscribe to us, rate us, review us, all that jazz I tell you every week wherever you get a podcast at, and follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games alike, and our dope giveaways. I'm your host, as always, Travis White, aka Travelus on most internet platforms. Joining me, as always, my co-pilot, or my partner in crime, Mike Peapack. Mike, as always, it's a big week for us. It's Game of the Year talk. Going to be talking all our games of the year, but I still got to ask you what's good, what's going on, and of course, what have you been playing, my friend?
For me, life has returned to a little bit of a more normal pace in recent days. Thankfully, within the last week, things have gotten a lot more normal. Besides the Pittsburgh Steelers going to the Super Bowl, outside of that, for video game's sake, I'm still pretty focused on a goal that I had for this year as far as playing Halo is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
I had a goal as far as placing in a tournament was concerned. I almost achieved it week one.
Mm-hmm.
Just wanted to place top 16 in a tournament, and while it was an online qualifier, that was my goal for 2022, to hit top 16 in one of these Halo tournaments. And unfortunately, week one was the closest I've come so far, but because that's been one of my goals for like 2021 and 2022, that's pretty much not consumed my life, but as far as gaming's concerned, that's what I've been up to. So I've just been playing a lot of Halo Infinite, mixing in Valheim as a palate cleanser here and there, because if you've ever competed at something at a super high level, whether you're an athlete or if you are into esports or whatever, you know that after a long day or a couple of days in a row of playing a singular game, that while you do enjoy and potentially, are starting or have fallen in love with, or just have loved for a long time, in my case with Halo, there's times where you can't just play that game for 8, 7, 6, 5, how many hours you have. As a competitor, you're putting in 6, 7 hours, most likely a day. And that's been my grind since, high school. I took a little bit of a break after the first event, or after like Columbus of 2011 and Halo Reach, which was like our graduation weekend. I actually drove home from Columbus on Sunday. My brother and Sarah, who is now my sister-in-law, but at the time his girlfriend, came out and watched me play for a bit and hung out in Columbus. Checked out some different stuff in Columbus, but checked out the MLG tournament. And then, the main reason why my brother offered to come out was, him and Sarah just wanted to go on a little weekend trip, and Columbus was close, but it was their job to get me home for graduation. My mom wanted to see me walk, unless I was like going to win the tournament, which wasn't going to happen because they don't understand that there was, a couple of guys, no big deal, by the name of like Ogre 2 and Roy and Lunchbox and Pistola were on a team. So the chances of me winning the tournament were virtually zero. But my brother's main reason for being there was to make sure I made it home for graduation, and I did. So, but during high school, my regiment was go to school, go to golf or baseball practice, and then I went home and played Halo until 1 or 1:30 a.m., and then I showed up to school. And if you're asking, well, when was the time for you to study or do homework? I was born and gifted with a brain, not like a genius brain or anything, unfortunately. That'd be nice. But I was born with a good enough brain that I, absorb information, especially in a high school level. Even in college, I didn't really study at a very good rate when my ADD isn't killing me or ADHD isn't killing me. But I didn't study in high school. I didn't do very much homework unless it was like necessary for me to pass. And I passed high school with like a 3.1 GPA. And like, yeah, I look back at it as a 28-year-old and wish that maybe when I was 15 and 16, I spent a little bit more time studying and less time playing Halo, but you can't go backwards. You can only go forwards. And, you know, as a player who's spent a lot of time, you know, perfecting his craft, because you can spend a lifetime doing that, you know, I can't just sit there and play Halo for 12 hours a day every day, back to back to back to back. You have to be able to mix some things in. And unfortunately, you know, The Witcher is something that I am like full hard on for. But I'm eyeing the player break of Split 1, which is probably going to be sometime in June. The entire month of June will probably be the player break, which means no Halo tournaments at all, really. So that might be when I really delve into that. But Valheim's been that safety valve for us. Still, have we died off on it? Sure. I think me and Adam died off on it a little bit more than you and Kyle, or less than you and Kyle. You know, you have a lot of commitments, especially right now is like your busiest time of year, unfortunately for you, with work. And obviously you have a significant other who is now your wife to appease and a dog to appease, where me and Adam only have the significant others to appease right now. So me and him were definitely spending a little bit more time playing Valheim than you guys. And of course, Kyle did his thing where he was into it, and then he just kind of goes ghost and expects us to just wait. So me and Adam kind of hit a wall where we can only farm, you know, trolls and iron and tin and like, or not iron, I'm sorry, bronze and, well, whatever, copper and tin make bronze, but we can only farm that stuff for so long. And,
and that, like, I'm right there with you where, like, shocker, Valheim just may be on my Game of the Year list from what we've been doing with it, but my biggest, like, issue with Valheim is, like, it would be one of those games where I would gladly hop in and do things at a moment, like, totally whenever, but it is one of those things where, okay, Adam's the one who runs the server. He's the one who's got to make sure it's up and running. You know, can he, even if he's, you know, doing work stuff, can he throw it on in the background and not doing anything, but like, let me hop on and do it. If it was much more, you know, hey, these are dedicated servers, you could just hop in anytime, anywhere you have, or even if it was one of those things like in Fallout 76, where you could pay for a private world and it's, you know, however much it is, $5 a month or whatever, like, I would fork that over to be able to say, hey, whenever you guys can get on, just hop on. Like, if we could all get on at one time, that's great. If not, cool. I know I could still hop on and, you know, farm some stuff, or, you know, make sure, do some organizing for us so we don't have to later, or, you know, be the pack mule to drag some stuff back from our checkpoints so we can't go through portals on. Just things like that, where I wish it was much more, like, and granted, we can't ask for a lot, it's a small team working on this, but if there was more money involved with this project, that's one of those things where, hey, if they asked, hey, for $5 a month or $10 a month, whatever, while we're into it, like, yeah, I'll pay for it. Like, I want that stuff, because that's a game I could see myself being like, yeah, I have an hour between, you know, when I get home from work and Molly's working out until we hang out, and, you know, I'll be able to hop on later at night to play for 3 or 4 hours or whatever. But say I want to just play something for a little bit, but I don't want to invest a ton. Cool, I can jump in and farm some stuff or do whatever. I just wish we were able to do that, because it would just be, that game would take over my life. Like, it would just be one of those games that, like, that would be my go-to, like, okay, cool, I have an hour, I'm going to pop in and just do these things. Not like a Witcher, like you're saying, where that game consumes my life. When I start a playthrough with that, like, that's the game I play. I don't play anything else. I dump 50 hours alone into the main storyline, and then, you know, however many other hours into all the side quests and whatnot. Like, it would be a perfect pop in and out game, but it also is a perfect, hey, let's grind for 4 or 5 hours at least to, you know, build up and kind of progress throughout the world kind of thing. But not to interrupt you, but I totally agree, where it's a game that when you hit a wall because of what's going on, because it requires everyone to be on at one time. Like, it really does. And that's the only downfall.
And you can only do so much with, like, one player. So, like, or the other night when we were playing, like, when we were facing fuelings that are from the planes, like, it's a lot harder, you know, to kill the fuel wings with 1 or even 2 people. But when there was 3 of us, and I can stagger them with my at-gear spin attack, and you guys can just, like, gank him after he's stunned and do a ton of crit damage, like, that's ideal, obviously, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when it's just me and Adam, if we're out there mixing it up, like, or even if it's just one person, you can get overwhelmed by the enemies.
Oh
and
my god, yeah.
I was talking to you guys about the difficulty of the game in general, and I'll save it for if you're going to include it, spoiler alert, in your Game of the Year edition. Maybe we can both just talk about it at the same time, because I think it might make its way onto mine too.
Right.
Wink, wink. But I think they did a perfect job with the difficulty. Like basically how you progress through the game, and we'll talk about that later. But yeah, it's certainly a lot easier when there's 3 of us, and even better yet, when Kyle will be there to be 4 of us, even if he's just like kind of cannon fodder, it'll be a lot easier for us. Yeah.
Right. No, definitely. Yeah. So I'll kind of table that conversation because, shocker, like I said, I feel like this is a game that's going to be on both our lists. So we'll save it for that. But on my end, just in general, kind of cleaning up some stuff. For some reason, I wanted to hop in and kind of dick around more or less, like, for lack of a better fucking word or phrase, like dick around in Skyrim and just kind of poke my head into there. So I've been kind of playing that on and off a little bit. Still on Halo, still playing, a decent chunk. But even though I did get pissed off one day, pulled a Dr. Disrespect, uninstalled the game, and then, like, 5 hours later reinstalled it and started.
Already re-upped it.
Yeah, I'm a weak man. I understand my vices, so. But then also, too, on top of that, Molly and I have been going back and playing through The Walking Dead, the Telltale series. We are on season 2 now. Season 1, just as good as ever. That's hands down one of my favorite narrative experiences. There was a tweet that went around that was like, what's one of those games that makes you, as the credits are rolling, you're just sitting there and like soaking it in, and you're like, holy fuck, like one of those moments narratively. And I always, like, instantly, there's 3 games that come to mind. Uncharted 4, which I know we're not going to get into, but Life is Strange, and then The Walking Dead Season 1, where the narrative of that, the character depth, the way that you interact with characters, just everything that works so well in that game, that I know that people have been like, it kind of falls off after season 2, and even season 2 isn't that, it isn't like, a lot of people say they've been chasing the dragon since season 1, but to me, that's not the case necessarily. I've thoroughly enjoyed the whole narrative of Telltale's Walking Dead, but I do agree in the sense of nothing will top from a narrative perspective with that. And The Wolf Among Us I would put on that list too. But from that era, and really kind of dawning, like, it doesn't go past me every time that I'm like, this is a game that put adventure games back on the map. I don't want to say visual novel, but like point and click adventures, quote unquote, putting those style of experiences back on the map, non-combative, yada yada, like, you were just experiencing a story and crafting it to your own ability. So we've been going back through and playing that, like you would watch a TV show kind of thing, like just, an episode night kind of thing. So I'm sure we'll probably get through that again relatively quick. But yeah, and then just kind of dipping in and out of a bunch of things, like dipped into Fallout 4 again for some reason. Been playing Hades 2, kind of in and out on PC. Even kind of dipped into Mass Effect Legendary Edition, but mostly it's been Valheim and Halo still. But yeah, that's pretty much it on my end. I'm just looking at like my Steam library and even my Xbox profile, just seeing like what all have the fuck I played. So
Halo Infinite to you is like that late night McDonald's run or that late night Sheets where tomorrow it's going to tear you up inside.
Right.
And you're going to be sick as a dog. But like every time you're drunk, you're like, hell yeah, I need some food in me. And those are the only 2 options.
Well, right now, Halo is that experience that is like, hey, I have an hour. I'm going to play a couple of games, like, or it has that duality of, hey, I'm going to just hop in and play a couple games, or hey, I'm going to spend my Saturday just fucking grinding, like that kind of thing. And like Halo's always been that to me, but as much, it's such a love-hate relationship because, and I'll get into it in some of our discussions, I'm sure, but it's just one of those games that I'm trying to think of what the phrase is, but it's literally like a story in two parts where I'll go from one moment experiencing the highest of highs, being like, fuck, when this game hits, the movement, the gunplay, everything feels so fucking crisp and good, to then the game after playing on a 90 ping server and having, a couple of traffic cones as teammates. Like, and then you look after post game, oh, let's see what everyone's ranked. And I'm playing 2 or 3 Onyx players and a high diamond, and me who's mid diamond and 3 platinums. Like, okay, cool. Yeah, that really worked.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. So, but like I said, I'll get into it and we'll talk about it. But I guess now, with that being said, Mike, we can just kind of hop into our game of the year discussion. We seem to always kind of, I don't want to say we switch it up every year. This is what, 3rd year in a row that we're doing? Yeah, it would be our 3rd year of game of the year talk. But what we kind of settled on that I think works really well for our style of podcast and just kind of us as players in general. And we kind of did it last year too, where I want to focus on more so the games that we just enjoyed playing throughout the year, or like our best games of the year that we enjoyed. And it could be, yes, like I play more of a broad spectrum than Mike, I would say, but Mike's also much more deeper into a handful of games. He knows the ins and outs of those games on a much more critical level, I would feel. Where
thank you.
I play, Adam and I are very similar. Like, that's where our Venn diagram crosses, that we just fucking try a bunch of shit. Like, we just, okay, yeah, I want to give this a go. Oh, yeah, I want to give this a go. And I only may spend 20 hours in a game, where you may spend 60 hours in a game because you've really kind of, like, almost like Phas. Like, Phasmophobia, fucking excellent game. I love jumping into that, where we'll get on a run with it, and I'll be like, okay, cool, I'll hop into that again at some point, because I like the game, where you continue on with it because it kind of got the bug on you and you focus in on that game for a while.
I go through like the addictive. I go through addictive spells where it's like, if I'm into a game, I'm into a game. You know what I mean?
Oh, trust me. I'm picking up what you're putting down. I'm right there with you. It happens to me as well. But more so for the fact of, I think our conversation works well on just in general summing up our year in gaming. From a sense of, granted, yes, we still want to talk about, hey, what are our best games of the year, and primarily from this year, but at the same time too, even us talking before, like, I almost put Destiny 2 on my list this year because I had a ton of fun with the content this year, but that game is also, almost 5 years old. So, stuff like that, it's going to be broad, and it's going to be, I shouldn't say it, it's going to be focused on the year that was 2021 in the games that we played during there, specifically the ones that came out. But at the same time too, there's a lot of living, breathing games that are being updated today that came out a few years ago. Like, it's the Fortnite argument that people always, kind of gripe about. Oh, okay, well, Fortnite's going to win Best Ongoing Game at the Game Awards for like the 16th year in a row now because it keeps getting content updates and yada yada. Like, people still play it. So it's kind of one of those things, but mostly from a single player aspect and things like that, a lot of those games obviously are going to be focused from this year. So, Mike, why don't you kick it off if you have any, the way I looked at it, because I may have a little bit, I have 5 top games from this year that I want to talk about, obviously with one of them being truly my game of the year. But I do have a couple of honorable mentions too that I want to talk about. So do you have anything like that you kind of want to, hey, maybe is not your top games of the year, but something you do want to give a shout out to that you really enjoyed, I guess?
Is this it? I'm sorry, was the question just in general, like games that only were released this year, or games in general?
Well, games in general that we enjoyed this year. Obviously, if it's more like, I would like to focus, if it's single player experience or something like that that's came out this year, that obviously I think takes precedence in the conversation. But at the same time, there are tons of games that we played this year that, multiplayer games that didn't come out this year that are still being updated, still being given new content, that are still very much alive and well, that I'm still getting just as much enjoyment out of. And especially too, if they're getting new content, like, I feel like that should be on the table to be recognized, if that makes any sense.
I'm gonna throw out a few games that I'm just going to mention in passing. That I don't really need to delve much further into. One of them being Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition. The team over there did a fantastic job at providing content updates, what seemed like monthly or every 2 months, and did a very good job with that. So, that was awesome to see how much content they released every month over there. Another game that comes to mind, just in passing, is Back for Blood. I know, there's a lot of talk about the game in general, and there's some content that's a little bit rough or missing there, but I would like to say that I did enjoy that. Bigfoot, of course, we spent some good time playing that. And then as far as like another game that kind of I wouldn't consider, or I wouldn't say released this year so much, but I would say at least had a huge year would be the Splitgate the Splitgate game, along with the team over there that developed the game. They kind of stepped in when people were kind of really hankering for Halo Infinite, and they kind of released the game, and people really did seem to take a liking to that, including myself. So those are just my kind of, in passing, just throwing those few games out there, and then the rest of the games, I would like to, talk about a little bit more.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Back for Blood on my honorable mentions as well. Like you said, I think you pretty much nailed the head on that one. That it scratches that itch that we've been wanting for. Hey, where the fuck is Left 4 Dead? Kind of thing. Where that's always kind of the conversation about. Go ahead.
I'm still kind of feeling that way, by the way. But
100%, 100%. And that's
it's basically like giving, like, if I say, hey, I need ketchup for these French fries, which, by the way, if French fries are super dope or good, they probably don't need ketchup. Sometimes ketchup's an enhancement. Sometimes ketchup is a drowning out feature thing. But if I say, where's the ketchup, because the fries are dog shit and they really need ketchup, and you hand me Hunt's, like, that's kind of Back for Blood. Like, Heinz ketchup is Left 4 Dead, and Back for Blood is Hunt's ketchup, in my opinion. But that's the way I see it anyway.
Oh, I mean, I don't. For the most part, there's been one time that Molly brought home something that wasn't Heinz ketchup, and I threw it away. Like I told her, I was like, I'll give you the $5 or whatever this was. This isn't happening.
Yeah,
like,
this isn't.
Like
I could be all kinds of levels of poor, but I'm not. Like, I'm eating Heinz ketchup.
There's two things that I'm like with that. One being Heinz ketchup and the other one being Jif peanut butter. Personally.
Me too. And by the way, the one time my significant other brought home single ply TP, and I literally handed her like cash. I handed her cash. I'm like, I don't care how poor like you would think we are. Go ahead and why don't you get us a little bit of a double ply, because that shit ain't happening, by the way. And, we got double ply, and the rest has been all good. But, yeah, I mean, I agree with you with the Jif peanut butter, the ketchup, and, again, single ply TP just ain't it, Chief.
That's like corporate levels of, that's like the corporate bathroom.
Cost cutting?
Yeah, like,
yeah.
And that's what I've told my significant other, too, that, she bought, she loves Aldi's, which... shout out to Aldi's. They're fucking great.
Yeah.
But she brought home whatever their brand version of peanut butter was. And I was like, okay, like, listen, that's fine if we're giving it to the dog, but, and that's no, stab at Abby, because she just loves peanut butter no matter what. She doesn't give a fuck what it is. But me, even then, I'm like, I wouldn't feed this to our dog. Like, Jif peanut butter is the only answer. Also, on top of that, man, I can't believe single ply TP.
Yeah, that's a rough one, man. That was a hard pill to swallow when my finger, almost.
Oh, dude, where you almost give yourself a fucking
yeah, like yeah, I'm almost checking
exam.
my colon. Yeah, I'm almost giving myself a prostate massage. Yeah,
no,
bro. Shit ain't happening, bro.
Anyways, video games. How did this work in with Back for Blood? Oh yeah, so basically we were saying that. With Back for Blood, though, like, it mostly feels like, and this isn't a knock at Turtle Rock, because it wasn't nefarious in the same manner, but it almost felt at times that I was playing a mobile game version of Left 4 Dead.
Yeah.
And I say that more so in the card collecting aspect. You usually typically see that with a lot of free to play games where you're still doing the main act that this, the game's originally centered around, whether it's a spin-off game from an established IP or whatever, or, a genre of a game where you're still doing like, hey, this is a first person shooter, but there's also this element to it. There's cards centered around here that you have to build a deck, and eventually, more so with mobile games, hey, you could buy cards, you could buy packs of cards, or buy gems to do whatever. Like, it really gave me that feel with it, because at least with games like, Hearthstone, even, I mean, you and I were both kind of into Elder Scrolls Legends for a while, that, like, games like that, like, I'm very much open into the fact of, hey, this is what this game is, and I'm investing in that, the meta and the ecosystem that game has right now of being a card game, where when I'm playing Left 4 Dead, it's cool that you're saying, hey, we want to throw in these modifiers and different things like that you could have a unique playing experience every time you go out. It just doesn't come off as that. I think it's very much like, even when we're playing, and I know that is an applicable thing that we need to be focusing on whenever we're doing our campaign runs, I'm still very much in the fact of like, okay, I'm just clicking on something, or I'm finding the simplest one and just using. I just want to play the game. Like, I think there's too much emphasis on the card game that holds it back, when there could have been much more TLC put into the actual product in terms of the gameplay being what we were all hoping for, this return of a Left 4 Dead shooter. But, and not that game is bad necessarily. I'm still putting it as my honorable mentions. I've had fun with it. We still have fun with it from time to time. But
we'll say that, like, the card game, like, I don't know, like, I remember the way the game played. Like, I'm a little weird with, like, with some of the movement and stuff like that of games, where, like, I'll remember how games play, how games feel, how it feels to aim, how it feels to shoot, the reload speed, like, those kind of things are something that I kind of ingrain in my muscle memory, right? And at times, like, I remember during the beta, the way Back 4 Blood felt with all the cards that were included, and then whenever the game came out on fresh release and came out on full release, like, I remember the first playthrough being like, wow, my character's really slow. I don't have a lot of health. I don't reload very fast. I don't aim very fast. Yada yada yada. So I will say that some of the cards are certainly nice quality of life things that are kind of cool, I suppose. But I will say, in general, I agree that some of them are just super they're just a little bit overcomplicated for no reason in a game that, like, at its core is simply, I'm gonna go and shoot a bunch of zombies with my friends and survive. Like, that's what that game is supposed to be. And sometimes I feel like, they might have gotten a little bit more into how much gameplay can we include in this little zombie shooting game type thing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. And I'm right there with you on that, where it just feels like instead of focusing on the core of this game, there was too much focus on, well, we still have to make it our own. It can't be just straight up Left 4 Dead, because obviously Valve still owns the IP for that and yada yada. I'm sure they can't just literally make a copy and paste version of Left 4 Dead. We got to make our own spin on it. But at the same time, too, people have made horde-based zombie shooting video games for quite a long time. So it's nothing necessarily super new. But Turtle Rock did still, I think, do a good job making this game in terms of the base gameplay and having something that is somewhat of an updated version of Left 4 Dead, until hopefully one day Valve understands that, oh shit, that's right, we can make money off of both selling games and making games still. Wow! Oh my god! So hopefully one day we do get a Left 4 Dead 3. But the other honorable mention I did want to give out, though, before we go into our top list, Deathloop. And I'll be quite honest, I'm shocked I put this on my honorable mention. And that's not any shot at Deathloop, because I think Deathloop is a fucking fantastic game. Arcane is fucking brilliant, especially when it comes to making a truly kind of how do I want to put this? They're great in making uniquely felt lived in worlds that feel so at home to you as the player. When you walk into it, you're not feeling necessarily, oh, this is very, like, it's hard to explain. Where when I step into a world that is made by Arcane, such as Dishonored or Prey, when I go into those worlds that they are giving me, or their version of the world, it feels very much just completely, fully realized and perfectly, like, nothing feels out of place. I step into that world, it's immersive, it's very much so not jarring when you go into, because some games that you do hop into are very nonsensical, which is sometimes a good thing or a bad thing in terms of their environments. And I mean that from a sense of environment being, items in the world, rooms that you walk into, the actual outdoor environments that you interact with. I think Arcane just is a fucking masterclass at that. Just like I think, like, nobody touches Ninja Theory right now going into fucking Hellblade 2. Like, nobody touches them in terms of immersion right now. So I just want to give a quick shout out to Arcane, because I think Arcane and Deathloop, because I think Deathloop is a fucking fantastic game. It didn't hit the highs as much as I thought it would. And I think a lot of people were like that too whenever they saw IGN give it a 10, heading into it, like, oh shit, wow, and not that anybody was thinking, man, this is going to be everyone was very much high on this game heading into it. But I think a lot of people too were burnt out for the fact of, we saw an asinine amount of marketing on this game, especially being focused on being, hey, this is a Sony exclusive, for right now, even though it's owned by Microsoft. And because of the whole, the lateness of the deal and whatnot, and Microsoft wanting to honor those previous licensing or exclusivity deals, on that. So, but I played it on PC, so I really, really did enjoy my time with Deathloop. I think at times it stumbles a little bit in terms of what it wants you to do at times, in terms of how you want to go about doing things. It tries to make itself look like a roguelite in a sense where it's not really. And I think it comes off with that a little bit. Like, tonally, it gets a little confusing at times. But at the same time, too, the gunplay feels great. The dialogue that you hear from some of the people that you run into, the enemies that you run into, is fantastic. Just the writing is just, like I said, nobody touches Arcane. Both studios at Arcane really, when it comes to their world building and their immersiveness, in terms of, like, just the people and the things you'll find around, like, all the worlds that and a lot of people had an issue with, Dishonored's always viewed as a cult classic, in the sense of, which I understand, nobody's really into, like, whale punk, like, a steampunk atmosphere revolving around whale oil, like, that doesn't, but everything about Dishonored, of assassinations and, like, using these powers to go around and kill people in the most, like, interesting ways and whatnot, like, being what feels like a 17th century Hitman game, like, that's fucking dope, so they're really, like, I think this definitely talks to people a lot more than Dishonored did. So I'm really excited for the future of Arcane, because I think Arcane is one of those diamond in the roughs when it comes that Microsoft picked up with the Bethesda deal. I think they have the ability to be looked at like an Insomniac at Sony. So I'm really, really excited for the future with Arcane. But yes, so my second honorable mention I wanted to give a shout out to was Deathloop. But so, Mike, why don't you tell people what the first game you want to talk about is for your top games of the year?
Sure. I would say for me personally, now again, I want to kind of start this off by saying, like, if me and Travis are talking about what our top games of the year are, you have to understand that it's mostly from a personal standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, how we feel individually about the game, not how it was critically acclaimed, not how it was widely accepted. Simply, how do we feel individually about the game? So now that I've gotten that out of the way, the first game I really want to talk about and kind of dive into and just kind of take a little bit of a deeper dive at is, a game that might that might be on your list. So maybe if you want to kind of bounce off of it, that's fine too. It might be on a lot of people's lists, but it's certainly, one of the higher ones on my list. And that's going to be Resident Evil Village.
Hell yes. Number 3 on my game of the year.
I don't have mine listed.
No, that's totally fine. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
I mostly have, I do have mine listed, but really 2 through 5 are much more, really kind of set them in any order. There is a number 1 that I have that I'm like, this was the best game I played this year as a full package. But anyways, though, yes, Resident Evil is number 3 on my list, but in my top 5 games of the year.
Yeah. So for me, when I look at games, Travis is certainly a guy who plays a lot more video games than I do. As a casual player, you're a bit more of a variety gamer, so you do get your hands on some more stuff than I do. But, I saw Resident Evil Village as a great harkening back to what really worked for Resident Evil 4. I saw it as a nice harkening back to what really worked in Resident Evil 7. Resident Evil good lord, Resident Evil 7, sorry. The horror aspect of using the first person of Resident Evil 7 combined with the atmosphere and what was very attractive about Resident Evil 4. So with that being said, Resident Evil Village was a pretty easy pick to go on my list. Now, do I wish that there were certain parts of the game that are a little bit longer? Absolutely. I think everyone kind of feels that way. Castle Dimitrescu was one of the more enjoyable parts of the game. Not saying it was the best part or other parts weren't enjoyable, like Resident Evil 7 with the boat, but it was certainly one of the highlights of the game, without a doubt. And with that being said, the whole game in itself, I thought was a very strong entry in the Resident Evil franchise, and I think it's one that, when looked back upon in 20 years, it'll be looped in with Resident Evil 2 remastered, Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil 4. It'll be one of those ones that people point at and say, yeah, this is what I liked so much about Resident Evil. I loved the gunplay. I thought shooting was really fun. I thought they did a very good job at balancing skill with, difficulty. Like, I know in Fallout, for instance, and even like with Red Dead Redemption, if you're a very skilled player at firing your weapons, you can kind of brute force your way through some of the more difficult parts of the game. I thought that was a very good part of Resident Evil 8. I thought some of the difficulty in playing through, I didn't play Village of Shadows yet, or whatever the hardest difficulty is, but I did play the hardest available to you at first playthrough, and I thought that it was a very good. Some of the enemies were bullet sponges and a little frustrating, but they didn't just base their difficulty off of that. They also limited the resources that were available to you, which I think is a decent way at creating difficulty, if you will. I thought having to choose when you had certain ingredients were more plentiful than others, and I thought it was a very good way to add a little bit of strategy to Resident Evil, which it always kind of had been. Am I going to mix this gunpowder to make pistol ammo, or do I need shotgun ammo, or do I need this? Do I need that? You know what I mean? And I thought that being one of the premises of adding difficulty was a very smart move, because it didn't just make the game hard to be hard, which, in Halo Infinite's case, that's always been a little bit of an issue with me on legendary difficulty, is the enemies just shoot at you. They're not only are they very strong and tanky, but then they just shoot at only the player, which is one of the ways that they raise the difficulty, which is kind of a cop-out to me. But for Resident Evil 8, I thought the environment and the setting the stage was super well done. I thought the acting was well done. Maybe not the main protagonist. His voice acting could be a little bit cheap and cheesy at times, but Chris Redfield's sections and Chris Redfield's parts, all very well done. I was super impressed with that.
Dude. Whenever it went to Chris Redfield, I remember getting visibly a huge just smile on my face where I was like, oh, fuck. Like, one of those moments where I'm like, oh shit, they're actually gonna let you fucking do this. And all right.
And it was super pimp, basically going in with the shock and awe of having the submachine gun that was silent.
Yeah.
And being able to call in
realistically, granted, you have much more, in my opinion, the player has much more power within, like, this one is much more, I felt Resident Evil Village was trying to, in a lot of ways, mirror Resident Evil 4. The feeling of this being a survival horror game, but a much more action-oriented survival horror game, but working in the best way possible. But at the same time, too, when you're looking at it, yes, compared to, in my opinion, 7, you're a lot more powerful. You're still very much like, Ethan Winters isn't truly decked out with the most powerful equipment in the world in this game. So this was very much a, hey, no, we're going to actually let you kind of have your cake and eat it too. Let's put the player in a powerful position, give them a weapon that's going to fucking rip through some people. Like, it fucking was great, that dichotomy of going from survival horror to much more action oriented, at least for a little spin. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but go ahead.
No. I was pretty much just going to end my little spiel with, like, the ending was one that, I thought was probably, one that maybe could have been a little bit different or a little bit better, some people might feel. But to me, overall, I thought it set the stage for their next entry, which, clearly there's going to be a new iteration of the Resident Evil franchise, which is going to be super cool. And I thought the way they did it was relatively tasteful. If they were done with writing Ethan Winters' story, which evidently, spoiler alert, they were, at least they're doing it in a way that kind of makes sense and continues the Ethan Winters, like, bloodline, which I think is really cool, because they did such a good job at setting his, like, you kind of got comfortable with how Ethan thinks and behaves in Resident Evil 7, and to continue that through Resident Evil 8, again, was the voice acting and stuff campy at times and a little bit like goofy? Absolutely, but I feel like you're going to always get that with video games. It's super hard to have, like, a cinematic type masterpiece video game in today's day and age with voice actors, where I think it takes a lot. I think you have to spend a lot of money one way or the other, and sometimes voice acting is one of the ones that might not get it as much. And you might have a voice actor who you need to get into the studio to do things, and you only have certain parts of the story fleshed out, so you have them read have them read certain lines, and then you come back and say, "Oh wait, we need you to do more lines, and this is how we need you to read them." And that person hasn't gotten to, like, kind of see from point A to point B how the actor is supposed to behave. And I'm not trying to say that voice actors in video games are obviously going to be as good as, like, Leonardo DiCaprio or people that truly understand their characters. But I feel like as a voice actor, I feel like it's almost like a situation where the game might need to be done before the voice actors are reading their lines in certain situations, because it's really hard to elicit certain, like, just say X line and act surprised. Like, how's, like, in what way am I surprised? Am I scared surprised? Am I happy surprised? Am I surprised? Like, that kind of thing. Yeah, that kind of thing starts to creep into your mind. But that's my spiel on Resident Evil 8. I really enjoyed it. I know some people didn't. But no, Resident Evil 8, certainly one of my, considerations for Game of the Year. And I would say that this year was one for me as a player. I would just like to say, like, throw this out there, that I don't think there was a game in particular that I would say was so far better than others. It certainly deserved certainly deserved Game of the Year recognition, or even deserves the Game of the Year. So I'll just put that out there, and then I'll let you either bounce off that idea, or we can hear your game, one of your games that you want to talk about.
No, definitely. I'll definitely add a little more to Resident Evil Village. I really, really thoroughly enjoyed and enjoy in general the direction that Capcom is taking this franchise right now. And really, that's both in terms of the new mainline entries that are, because we kind of talked about this leading into Resident Evil Village, especially too when we're getting a lot more rumors and reports of Resident Evil 4 remake is not too far off in the future. That being in active development, which I would imagine is probably either going to be next year, I would say at the latest. Obviously, I don't know for sure, but it seems like now that they have a solidified base with the RE engine, like, which can we just point out before I continue, is it just fucking baffles me every time I fucking say it.
Yeah, what's up?
RE Engine doesn't stand for Resident Evil Engine.
What does it stand for?
It's RE, and if you look during like the intros of the games that are made in the RE engine, they show the like hand reaching for the moon. It's reach for the moon. RE stands for reach. Like, what?
Why? Just
What?
name it Resident Evil Engine.
Right,
Everyone
yeah.
knows what you're making.
Right, exactly. And granted, the RE engine's used, it's used in a couple of different games now too, but primarily, obviously, it's the technology behind the Resident Evil series. So, but it never ceases to amaze me since I found that out, like, I think it was like a year or two ago. I was like, what the you're fucking kidding me, right? Like, anyways, though. Yeah, so but I really enjoy, we kind of talked about this leading into Resident Evil Village, that I really do think Capcom has the bandwidth with this franchise to really kind of check all the boxes right now, where you could have your new mainline entries take this first person perspective, this much more, I don't want to say tropes, but much more leaning into modern horror video games of their presentation, and still having your survival horror roots in there, making them very much feel like Resident Evil games still, but taking new different directions. But also you can have that duality of having your remakes out there, bringing in, making a Resident Evil, which granted they did already, but much more in the sense of like they did with RE2 and 3 remakes of, hey, we're going to do a third person over the shoulder camera, kind of like we did with Resident Evil 4, but make it much more modern experience and have those, iterations come out. And, obviously Resident Evil 4 being next in the pipeline, that being one of the best games of all time, I really think that Capcom's onto something good, because with this game specifically coming out, they really opened up kind of a can of worms for really this franchise to go in any direction. Obviously, we talked about it with our review and whatnot, but I don't want to spoil anything for anybody to go and play Resident Evil Village on PC, Xbox, wherever. But I really like that this game went in a completely different direction than I expected it to go. I very much expected, when you get in, this is not a spoiler because this is very early in the game, but whenever you start this game, and even after, playing the main demo and the time demo that we had, the 2 time demos that were available, this game, for many know that this game isn't necessarily centered around, Lady Demistru. Like, a lot of people thought that going into this game, that she was the big bad, or she was very much, number 2 in command kind of thing.
Like Jack.
Right, right, exactly. Where in Resident Evil 7, and spoilers for Resident Evil 7, a game that is 5 years old. Holy shit. A 5-year-old fucking game. I almost said 4. I was like, no, that's not right. It's a fucking 5-year-old game. Incredible game. Go play it. But for a 5-year-old game, spoilers, when you find out that, no, Jack's not the reason why this shit's going awry. It's not, the Baker family you think. Exactly.
You mean it's not the guy chasing you around with a shovel trying to cut your head off with it the whole time?
You gonna lose your head.
It's not that guy?
No, it isn't that guy. But, and I guess maybe I should have expected that a little bit more going into Resident Evil Village, but much more of, I guess, tonally, I figured this would be focused much more on the feeling of a Resident Evil 4 in this gothic horror, much more in just the mansion alone, kind of leaning into 1 and 4 vibes. But it really surprised me with the freshness it had, the ability to really kind of take everything I liked about the first liked about Resident Evil 7 and the rebooted, I guess if you want to call it, version of Resident Evil, take that, at least from a gameplay perspective and whatnot, and iterate on it and improve it. Everything, it felt like a very natural progression forward from a gameplay perspective with Resident Evil in terms of their first person new iterations. It felt very natural, but I was also very happy that they also didn't just necessarily lean into, we could we can go this direction and keep it safe. No, they went out and they kind of got wacky with it, which it's Resident Evil. It's Capcom and Resident Evil. They're always going to be fucking crazy with this game in some fashion. But there wasn't, the one thing too that I really enjoyed, there wasn't necessarily one point, like you kind of brought up, Mike, that there wasn't a boat portion where, hey, I'm being taken out of this game right now, where it's boom, 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 in 7, where you're hitting all these major, the pacing is fucking fantastic until you get to the boat, and then it just kind of is a jarring stop. This didn't necessarily feel as much like that. There's games where I kind of have hit that before, and there's actually a game on my list that I'm going to talk about soon, but where I have hit that for. And it's very hard to kind of push through, even no matter how good of a game it is, if the pacing of the game from both a gameplay perspective and a storytelling perspective narratively kind of hit a wall. It's asking for a lot for players to kind of push through something they should be getting enjoyment out of. So I didn't feel they really had any major hiccups along that end. I enjoyed all the boss battles. I thought they were really interesting and really unique for the most part. I love the environments that you get to visit. It really, really was a stellar game. That's why I have it number 3 on my list. It definitely was one of the best linear experiences I had this year. So, Mike, I'm going to throw one out there. This was number 5 on my list, and kind of pick up on our conversation before, because I have a feeling you have this game on your list as well. Valheim. That is number 5 on my list. I figured we could talk about that now. So like I said, we kind of talked about it before a little bit with what this game means and what this game, the experiences we've gotten with it really this year. But more so, I really think it's impressive to see what this team did, where the sales numbers that were done. And it very much was, hey, this felt like, at least when we first got our hands on it, this very much felt like, okay, this is going to be one of those games, or at least going into this game, I should say. This is going to be one of those games that is a Fall Guys, is a Among Us, that right now it's the flavor of the week. And this is, hey, streamers kind of jumped on this, and it's got some noise behind it. But I really think that Valheim's kind of kept its, the steam going with it a little bit. Like, I don't feel like Valheim ever really truly dropped off, where it feels like it's just been really kind of a steady, I don't want to say super rise, but at the same time, it really did kind of have a nice, consistent level player base pretty much the whole time. And we kind of talked about it before, where I think, what did I say? I'm going to check right now, just since we're talking about it. Right now, there are almost 35,000 people playing Valheim on Steam. So, to me, for a $20 video game, a game that is made in Unity, which no shot at Unity by any sense of the imagination, but a game that has sold 5 million copies a month after its release on Steam, that to me is impressive. That to me is a game that really... It's hard to really knock some of the downfalls that I think, or some of the shortcomings we kind of highlight. When team size, the vision that they have behind this game, or what they want to do with this game. It's really hard to kind of bash that whenever the numbers don't lie with this game. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's, to me, this is, like I said, you and Adam kind of took the reins with this one a little bit more than I did. I only have about 30 hours into it. I think you have around 90, and Adam has 300. He's went far into it, but granted, he's also played a couple different servers with people. But yeah, for me, this has been a fantastic, kind of just a little... We'll kind of go on runs with it. It's one of those streaky games that we'll have, Fast can kind of get like that. But this is very much when this game hits, it really hits. Like, when you have objectives in this game to do in terms of what you got, or what we decide to do, and you're working towards something, it really scratches that feel of hey, I'm playing an open world RPG or even an MMO RPG, and having that communal feel of progression that you're doing with people on this on the server that is completely yours, you know, like I said, the one big downfall I have is, you know, having not being able to really kind of jump into it anytime I want to kind of work on stuff for us. But at the end of the day, that's minor to me. So I didn't know if you had anything else you kind of want to throw in on it or not, but
about Valheim, I think the biggest thing I kind of wanted to talk about was like the difficulty scaling that the game has.
Oh yeah, that's true.
It's super interesting because, to be honest, the way that they kind of mapped out the game, where the meadow is a relatively easy place where you can kind of get your feet wet and it teaches you about the game. Then the Black Forest, it's punishing with the trolls and stuff, and it kind of teaches you like, oh, hey, by the way, you know, you might think that this area is going to be easy or whatever, but it's not going to be that way, because there's things that are lurking in some of these areas that, you know, you won't be able to kill, or they're going to kill you really fast. And I think that the way, just in general overall, the way that they paced the difficulty on progressing through the sections was done in a really tastefully way, where you get a severe like sense of accomplishment when you progress through the game. And that's all the more I really wanted to say about Valheim. I really loved it. If you're into crafting, if you're into adventure and things of that nature, you know, it's a super good entry into that. And I think you would, if you've been living under a rock, I think it would be a good idea for you to maybe get involved in that game.
No, definitely. And I was kind of thinking about it too. It really kind of, when you bring it up, oh, if you like Minecraft, you like different things like that, like, it really is a perfect Venn diagram for a lot of major community-based games that are out there right now. World of Warcraft, different MMORPGs, open world games that have really kind of taken off, that focus around, you know, crafting and things like that. Even like games like, what was the one I reviewed? Boundless, very much kind of in a similar vein that I reviewed a couple years ago for a website. But, and of course, Minecraft too, on top of that. So, and we really kind of saw a break from that, like the Minecraft influence of stuff. Everyone was making Minecraft clones for a long time. But people kind of moved away from that. And I think that's a good way to kind of approach it, of you're getting this crafting experience in this, you know, focus around going and farming and building and creating this communal experience within the server you have. And I love too that everything that you do in this game is procedurally generated. But you saying that in most open world games, you're going to find, at least a lot of bigger AAA open world games, a lot of them are built around gauging, letting the player know, hey, we don't want to give you a golden path, but this is a golden path. Like, for example, in the modern Assassin's Creed games, you zoom out on the map, there are different pockets of areas and different, you know, I'll just use, you know, counties or whatever you want to call them, areas that have level ranges on them or level brackets that, hey, this area is really confined for people who are level 30 to 35. This place, unless you're level 50 and above, don't go in here. You know, so what I like about Valheim so much when it comes to the progression side, that, like you were saying, and going into an area and you may get waxed, but it's one of those things that, okay, in that, if you think about like Vikings at that time, like, or just, you know, kind of the early forms of modern humanity, going and exploring and kind of going out there, not, you know, none of them knew that. None of them knew what you were getting into. Like, you kind of had to go and kind of dip your toe in the water and find out, and then mark it and say, okay, we know if we go into this area, we're going to get fucking waxed. But we want to explore that area over there because it looks like there could be some really, really solid, like, rare materials that we'll need. So we got to plan out our course, you know, correctly. So I really think Valheim hits that on the head perfectly, that it really kind of leans into exploration and being rewarded, or, you know, sometimes it like a risk or reward with that exploration, but it's addictive in that sense of you want to still go out there and find more. So I think they balance that really, really well. So on my end, kind of looking at where I want to go, Well, you know what? How about this? I'll talk about this one next because there's, I'm sure, another game on here that we'll talk about. But it's number 4 on my list for games of the year. Guardians of the Galaxy. I was very critical of this game when it first was announced at E3 this year. I shouldn't say very critical. I always thought gameplay looked pretty good. I always thought, it's being handled by Marvel Games now, and Bill Roseman and that whole crew, with how they approach licensing their IP, have been very, very kind of set the standard moving forward on how a lot of people, I mean, we're seeing it now, obviously, with these are all Disney properties, but Star Wars as well. On top of that, Disney licensing in general. So we're seeing more picking and choosing and finding, hey, we want to work with this development studio. What would you guys like to make in our IP library? Like, if you could pick, what would you want? And most of the time, we're going to give you that. And seeing this, I kind of talked about it before whenever I said, oh, yeah, I finally went back and played it and over break and really enjoyed my time. I had, when it first showed, I did have the thing that so many people had with Marvel's Avengers when that was shown of, ooh, I'm kind of having this Twin Peaks, like, these look like the people I'm so familiar with, but they're not Marvel Studios versions of Iron Man, Hulk, whoever. It sounds kind of like them, but they're kind of like the Great Value brand of them. Like, I didn't have that with Marvel's Avengers, but I had that with this a little bit. And maybe that's because from a cinematic, like, being a big comic nerd, I guess I was much more open to the idea of, like, okay, well, if you read comics, like, you'll understand that there are like 60 different Spider-Men out there. There's 60 different Batman out there because they're all like, there's runs of comics. So there could be a one-off, like, 10-issue run of a specific Batman story that is technically a different Batman than what you would get in the New 52 run. So things like that, where I was like totally cool with that with Marvel's Avengers, with Guardians of the Galaxy, since I didn't really have that comic background with them as much. Like, getting into, my touchstones with them, I guess, are the MCU versions of them. So I was kind of more or less on that, like, that's not Chris Pratt, and that's definitely not Dave Bautista giving an awesome Drax, impersonation, or, Rocket, and, nobody does Groot like Vin Diesel, let me tell you. So, but in general, though, I definitely was a little more critical than I expected to be with that game at first, but really, as it went on, and after obviously a lot of people telling me, hey, no, this is really good, and from previews we got and stuff like that, I'm glad when I finally got to jump into it, I definitely lessened on that, because there's a lot of heart in this game. Something I was really excited about was that this is still very much knowing how Square Enix can be sometimes with trying to find ways to add financial, incentives to their games, if you want to call it that, to, in different things like multiplayer aspects. This was very much a single player narrative focused video game. And that's what I want really from Marvel right now. That's what makes me adore Insomniac Spider-Man. That's what makes me really think that there is going to be no shot in hell that Insomniac can't fucking knock it out of the park with Wolverine. Like, and really what they're going to hopefully do with Star Wars moving forward, that they're working with these, working with so many partners now that are, hey, we saw what it was like to let Respawn handle a single player narrative experiences from this universe that is very much built around narrative. So let's give them that. Like, that's what comics are all about for the most part. You're reading them to get a great story out of them. So I was really excited about that. The story is fucking fantastic. That's obviously the strong point, as many have talked about, winning Best Narrative at Game Awards this year. Very much, deserving, because it was very much a fantastic narrative. There was a lot of heart behind it. A lot of, there's one part that's making the rounds on Twitter recently of people bringing it back, a moment with Drax, that are saying this is the reason why it won Game of the Year. It really goes into some parts that I wasn't expecting for this group of heroes to kind of go into. So I really thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought the combat was great. I thought the progression system was pretty good in it. The exploration was awesome. The incentive to explore, to get collectibles, different cosmetics. Of course, naturally, like I said, my touchstone for these characters are the MCU versions. So naturally, I looked up how to, where in what chapters and whatnot should I be focusing on to get all the MCU costumes out of it. So then I could throw, Dave Bautista's Drax skin on Drax, things like that. So, but realistically, I think this game stands so much on its own within the Marvel lineage of stories, just like Insomniac Spider-Man does, and hopefully Wolverine, and hopefully what they can eventually get to with Marvel's Avengers. It seems like they're turning a corner with that too, potentially. So I know you obviously didn't play this game, Mike, but I wanted to throw that out there kind of before we get into a game that I know eventually I feel like is going to be on the list. But yeah, Guardians of the Galaxy, man, it was great. So what is your next game, Mike?
I would say my next game for consideration of Game of the Year, and this is going to be a little bit of a weird entry because it's going to be a little bit of a combo, but it's the same game. Mm-hmm. So the game I'm going to give a mention to in Game of the Year talks is Diablo 2 Lord of Destruction.
Hell yeah.
And the reason why I'm including the older version with it is because while Diablo 2 Resurrected did a lot of very good things with it, updated graphics look really good, the new skills look really good. The public test realm has just gone out where they're trying to make some changes and some tweaks to some of the skills and abilities to make more builds viable. Well, all of those things are happening during Resurrected. Obviously, kind of marred by a little bit of a bad mark or blemish from the labor dispute and everything else that's going on at Blizzard. So I give the classic D2 Resurrected, the classic Diablo 2 Lord of Destruction, and D2 Resurrected the nod, because while D2 Resurrected is a game that came out this year, I have a hard time giving remakes Game of the Year consideration, even if it's a game that I certainly spent a lot of time and really enjoyed playing. Mm-hmm. And it's clearly backed by a team that cares. Mm-hmm. First and foremost, they really do care about Diablo 2. They care about the experience that people get from Diablo 2 in 2021 and now 2022, which is, something that is really interesting to see. Mm-hmm. The game ages like fine wine. It's a lot of fun. I still love it. Like I said, I know you haven't necessarily played it yet, but me and Adam spent some time playing it. And at the end of the day, is it old Diablo 2? Absolutely, it's Diablo 2. Mm-hmm. But, like I said, in the public test realm this week, they're trying to make some changes that make sense to breathe some new life and give some new builds some experience. So, all that being said and being considered, that's why I have Diablo 2 and Diablo 2 Resurrected listed as, in the Game of the Year discussion myself. And I don't have much more to elaborate on it because it's Diablo 2, man. Like, anyone that's played Diablo 2 kind of understands what I'm talking about when I say that. Mm-hmm. But I thought they did a really good job and they were really tasteful in their efforts to make this game.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. And I haven't.
And it blew Warcraft 3 out of the water. So I was a little concerned after playing Warcraft 3 that Diablo 2 Resurrected wouldn't get the tender love and care that it deserved, but it certainly got that.
Oh, definitely. And that's what, when I knew how on edge you were about this going into this game. But I've always had a bigger touchstone to Warcraft 3 over Diablo 2. But at the same time, I've played a lot of Diablo 2, played a lot of Diablo 1 and 3. So I'm a big Diablo fan. I haven't dived into it this much, or that much. I've been kind of waiting for us to be like, hey, you know what? Let's do a playthrough, to kind of grind through. Because I always associate playing Diablo anymore with playing co-op, or playing, a shared world or whatever you want to call it.
You mean games in 2021 come out with the co-op feature?
I know, crazy, right? How about that Wendy's burn?
Oh, dude.
That was great.
Actually, I'm supposed to be on a diet with my girlfriend, trying to lose some weight, trying to stay strong together. But I might have
if I didn't want some Wendy's.
Literally, I'm about to have to start giving Wendy's my money here. That was, top notch.
Dude, I can go for a Frosty with fries right now.
Not even a frosty, man. I'm just thinking of like a double, like the bacon double stack they do. Like the $5 biggie bag.
Dude,
Just
that hands down the best value, I think, in fast food, which
for sure
is bad. It's not good, but but yeah, I've been waiting to kind of dive into that head first a little bit, just for the sole fact of I like playing Diablo with friends anymore. It's, don't get me wrong, Diablo narratively is great. I think, like you said, this is absolutely a love letter from Blizzard fans and to Blizzard fans from Blizzard fans that now work at Blizzard. And hopefully they're treated a lot fucking better than some have been. But it really took a lot to separate the art from the artist when it comes to the shitty ones, that is. Knowing that the 1% shouldn't be able to ruin all the hard work and love and blood and sweat that was put into this remake, in this remaster, remake, of Diablo 2 Resurrected, that 1% shouldn't ruin the 99's, all that tender love and care that went into this. I've been waiting to kind of dive more into that with all of us, but no, definitely. And I think it very much deserves to be on our list of games, but, so I'll bring this up because I only have one more after this, and that is my true game of the year that I played. But my number 2 is the quote unquote complete package of Halo Infinite. As much as Halo will pain me at times, specifically Halo Infinite, as much as this experience will pain me at times, I've put in at bare minimum 150 hours now into the game. And that's primarily multiplayer, which I want to go back and play another run of single player. It's hard to say then. I'm very much in the camp of I can't think the game is that bad if I put that amount of time into it. There must have been enjoyment with that. And there was a lot of enjoyment. And there still is a lot of enjoyment. This is a game that you and I, us who have been longtime Halo fans, that Halo is in the DNA of our gaming histories. Like, you can't tell the story of our gaming histories without Halo, specifically you for sure. But definitely, from especially a campaign side on mine for sure. But Halo Infinite, it's hard to say. I know this is a game that we kind of put for a long time that this has to be a 100% knock it out of the park. No doubt in anybody's mind that this that this is a great game. And I think they came very close to that at the beginning. Is there a lot of issues with cosmetics? Yes. Is there a lot of issues with, network stability, if you want to say, even if there isn't necessarily, I don't want to even say stability, but what it's based on? Is there issues with the ranking system? Is there issues? There are issues with this game, but a lot of them seem like they are fixable issues from a lot of perspectives. Some maybe not, but I still feel when I play this game, there's something great here, or there's something that could be great here. It's almost like, and it's suffering from that. The reason why this is a mid 8 to, a mid 8 game, I'd say, compared to what it needed to be a 9.5 to 10 game, is that this released in mind being so, hey, this is a platform for, we got a 10-year plan for this as a platform. Halo Infinite is going to be an ever-evolving game. That doesn't mean that we got to rush this game out. You're free to play off the bat, and we've talked about this a lot. I don't want to necessarily harp on it too long, but this is a game that is coming out free to play. The campaign is going to be it's starting to become, it looks like one of the worst kept secrets in gaming, at least within the Halo community, that we're going to get multiple campaigns out of this game. We're going to see this be, hey, almost in a similar style to Destiny of, hey, you're going to pay for campaigns for this game as it comes out, and you'll get to see more and more of the Zeta Halo and explore that or whatnot, and push the story forward. But at the same time, too, I'm much more in the camp of, there's a lot of really great, live service titles that, launched a little rough, but not with the problems that Halo had. And like you were saying, it's going to be rough for them to really bounce back from that, considering you have a short window to really make your stamp within, especially like the Twitch communities and things like that. Streamers and content creators, you really have to be able to get in, make, have your 2 weeks of just knocking it out of the water, being, having hundreds of thousands of people watching you at a time on Twitch, but it has to be able to maintain that steam. Carry that. Maybe not at 100,000 people every single day, but hey, 75% of that, we want to have that steam going forward. And we're seeing that die off, and it's rough to see. So for me, though, I still find a lot of enjoyment out of this game. I go back to it almost every day. I had a blast with campaign. I thought the story was interesting. I thought the environmental storytelling was really cool within the game. Finding all the different audio logs throughout the game was really cool. I literally have only found 2 skulls, which is shocking. I don't know how. The skulls are fucking ridiculous to find on that map. I think the open world is really cool. Did the gameplay loop kind of suffer a little bit at times at copy and paste, areas that you sometimes went into once you went from not the actual exterior of the ring, the open world part, but when you went inside to a lot of the, I want to call them dungeons, but a lot of the encampments and things like that, like were they kind of copy and paste? Sure. But at the end of the day too, it didn't really bug me because I was having a good time. I was having fun just going in. Hey, what's over there? Oh, that's a band, or I almost said bandit camp, because that's what so many of these fucking things are called. Oh, there's a high value target elite that's over there. I want to go and take him out. If I go over here and build up enough points, I'll be able to get the Scorpion tank added to my arsenal of things I could just call in at one of the Marine camps, like things like that. I really enjoyed just having fun with that sandbox. Me personally, that it made me want to go through and finish the game. Sure, is there like one section that I was like, man, this is kind of dragging on a little bit? Yeah, but at the same time too, you find ways to make that fun, like being able to the fucking grappling hook, having that on an infinite, quantity, being able to use that at whim in campaign is so fucking fun. The grappling hook in this game is hands down one of the best things I played in one of the best mechanics I've used in a video game in probably the last 3 to 5 years. And I'm not exaggerating with that. I fucking adore the grappling hook. When you have the ability to, outside of multiplayer, actually fuck around with it and play with the physics of the game and like see what you could do with it. Oh my God, it's so fun. It is just so fun to see. You know what? It has that Bethesda, like Todd Howard. You see that on the map, you can go to there and you can climb to it. Like that feel of, fuck, I just want to go and like see how high I can get on the ring. Like stuff like that. So I had a blast with this game overall. I'm still having fun with this game. I'm like you, I want to see a lot more improvements to this game because I care about this franchise and this IP. Obviously, I don't want to drag on too long because we talked about this game ad nauseum. But yeah, Halo Infinite, number 2 on my list.
Mike, you say you have one more after that?
I have one more after that.
All right. Again, I've talked ad nauseum about Halo Infinite. I've had good things to say. I've had bad things to say. I've had real things to say. I've had frustrated things to say. Overall, the game that released, was it worthy of a Game of the Year consideration? Absolutely. I think upon release week, release month, it had a lot of hype with it. It was a really solid game. I think a lot of people had a lot of fun with it. And that's ultimately what people are looking for when they're looking to play a Halo game. They were looking for 343 to really kind of capitalize on that opportunity that was there. And I think 343 did a relatively okay job at that. Is the support afterwards lacking? Absolutely. Obviously, it's leaving a lot to be desired, unfortunately. Is there a lot of things that could be better about Halo Infinite? Absolutely. But for this, for all intents and purposes of this list, I'll go ahead and just keep it flowery about Halo Infinite. I still have spending time on it. I guess I have like 260 active hours probably. I have 300 hours on Steam on this game already, and it's only been out a short amount of time. So obviously I'm still spending a shit ton of time on it, so I can't really say that many bad things. It's kind of in the same.
Shout out to Mike McCarthy. Almost to 500 hours in this game.
Yeah, that guy's spending a little bit too much time on it. But
shout out.
shout out. But you are 100% right. If you've spent that much time playing a video game, there's no way you can really say that it's bad, right?
Mm-hmm. There's got to be something that keeps you coming back to it.
Right. So that's all I'll say about Halo Infinite. And my next game on the list, of course, it was a little bit earlier in 2021 when COVID was, COVID's been going on forever. But, the game I kind of want to give a shout out to, and that's what this space is particularly going to be used for in this case, is I want to give a shout out to 7 Days to Die. Recently,
Thank you, 7 Days to Die.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We haven't gotten into it as much recently since they've made a huge bunch of tweaks to the gameplay recently. But 7 Days to Die is a game that just keeps on getting improvements. They keep on chipping away at what they need to make this game that full package, because it's still technically early access. And this team is just taking the money that they're getting and spending a lot of time and effort working on it. And shout out to those guys, because this is a game that some people let go under the radar. I think you're a little crazy if you think this game, if you haven't given this game a shot yet and you like survival horror and you like looter shooters and things of that nature, I would definitely give 7 Days to Die a bit more of a look, especially now, they are making a lot of good tweaks and changes to the game. So this would be a very good time for you to get involved if you haven't been yet. And that'll, that's kind of going to conclude my talks. I'm curious to hear what your number one game is, though, because there's been quite a bit of build up, because there's been some really good games named. Some people might think there have been some bad games named, but I'm honestly super curious to hear what your number one is, Trav.
So it's come to this point. To be honest, it's, I don't want to say it's not, it really shouldn't be that much of a surprise, just for the sole fact of I've kind of said it throughout the year. But after, kind of sitting down and looking at, hey, all of the big things that came out this year and all of the big, we got Halo Infinite, Resident Evil, Guardians, Valheim, Back 4 Blood, Deathloop, like all these games that are on my list that I had fucking fantastic experiences with, that are all helped define 2021 as a great gaming year. And that's only on, PC and Xbox. There was stuff on PlayStation and Nintendo that I fucking, loved. So a lot of people who were saying, 2021 was a down year, which I even said too, 2021's kind of feeling a little dry. At the same time, though, man, like when I thought about it and sat back and looked on it, it was a very diverse year. There was a lot of different things. Sure, there wasn't as many, high budget, third person, over the shoulder action adventure titles that, big blockbuster titles like we saw, maybe last year with Final Fantasy VII Remake, Ghost of Tsushima, Last of Us Part 2, things like that. But this year we got a lot of really diverse, great games, and it was a great year in gaming. But for my number one, after looking at everything and even stacking up everything else I played since it, there really wasn't anything that knocked off It Takes Two as my number one game of the year. When I talked about it, when Molly and I played it, obviously It Takes Two, coming from Hazelight Studios, who is led by the man, the myth, the legend Joseph Fares, the masterminds behind, A Way Out, Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, and a lot of other experiences that It Takes Two. When Molly and I played it and really kind of established what I love about Hazelight, and especially to Joseph Fares' mindset with wanting to make the co-op experience still a thing. And I always kind of thought, forcing a co-op experience on people like they did with, A Way Out and Brothers and stuff like that, like, I always doubt that right at the beginning. I'm like, but I kind of want to play through this. Like, maybe it's something that, like, I want to play now and don't want to, because it comes with a buddy pass. You can, as long as one person has the game, you can play it online. Like with somebody else, you just send them a code, they'll download the game, boom, you're good. It's included with everything. But obviously Molly and I played this couch co-op, but every time I'll be like, man, I just kind of want to play it myself or something like that. Like if I get into it and like it, I want to play it myself. But it just, those games don't do it justice because they're so designed perfectly for co-op. And this game is no exception. It's one of the best platformers I played, I would say, in this past generation of gaming. It's one of the most diverse and unique platformers in terms of you're getting so many different biomes throughout the game, so many different objectives, so many different just experiences really throughout the game in terms of the platforming and the action that it takes with it. The story is fantastic, and it's kind of heavy too for what it's being presented as hey, this, lovable and whimsical at times feeling like platformer that is co-op, that is built around two parents that are changed into dolls and they have to work together to change them back. Like, the narrative's pretty heavy for what is, I mean, this was even a game that was put into the best family game of the year category at the Game Awards this year, that it's built around, two parents and their daughter going through a separation and what that does to a child, and that child thinking, oh, this is my fault, or what am I going to do? Or, I ruin everything. And kind of, even the mental health kind of around that. And really the idea of, do we stay together for the kids, or, shout out to Blink-182. But it takes a lot of deeper themes and really handles them in an appropriate manner. Sure, there's lightheartedness to it. The dialogue's great. The charisma between and the karma between both the male and female. I can't remember their names off the top of my head. Rose is the daughter, though. But the dynamic that they had between being able to bounce off each other, it felt very natural. But yeah, man, it takes two. Nothing is topped like that experience of, and Molly even said recently, she was like, I kind of want to go back and play it. I'm like, you son of a bitch, I'm in. Let's do it. But I can't say enough great praises about this. And there's a reason why It Takes Two won Game of the Year at the Game Awards this year. A lot of people were surprised, and yeah, even to an extent, I was a little bit. But when I sit down and think about that game, from the polish standpoint, from the size of the studio that's handling this, and Hazelight, their back catalog of experiences that they've had, there shouldn't be any shock to this, because they took everything, especially from a design aspect of, some issues that people had with A Way Out in terms of, the co-op end of it, and, things like that a lot of people wanted a little more validation, a little more improvements with, that they kind of take through these almost gameplay design themes that they take from each game that is like the through line a lot for Hazelight games. I really think they evolved that to match what a modern platformer would be. And it almost is like it felt like it, and I'm sure I'll get a lot of hate for saying this. It was hands down the best non-Nintendo game I've ever played. This very much felt like just about the polish level of a Nintendo platformer, 3D platformer, that is. So, granted, nothing feels as good as a Mario Odyssey does, but at the same time, too, this was damn close. Like, I thought it was the perfect density level of, sure, you had a little weightiness to you like you want in some platforms, but at the same time, you were very dense and your moves felt good that you were going through. Your jumps felt good. So it really, and the puzzles were great. A lot of the different dynamics with the gameplay mechanics that you're playing in different biomes, whether it's, a bunch of toys that you're trying to get through, whether it's the big oak tree in the backyard that you're trying to make your way, through these, little small towns that are built in them that you would think you would find if you were shrunk down to that size. So it's hands down one of the best gaming experiences. I can't say enough, go play it. It's always on sale for the most part now. It was just on sale on Steam. I don't think it is anymore. I know it was during the winter sale, and then it was another week after that. But I think it might be, yeah, it's not on sale right now on Steam, but it is or it usually is, for the most part, on sale. But also, too, it's included with EA Play. So if you have Game Pass Ultimate, you can hop in and play it right now. You can play it online. You get a buddy pass with it. So only one person has to own the game or have a subscription for the game to play it, in terms of EA Play. So I really can't, if you like experiences like Co-op Portal 2 and things like that, you're going to love this. And if you love platforming, and just a great narrative experience and you're just going to have a smile on your face while playing this game. And that's, at the end of the day, why I feel so confident that this was hands down the best game I played this year. And even sometimes I'll look back and I'll be like, 2020 was that, did I pick the right game? 2019, I felt pretty strong about Jedi Fallen Order, but at the same time, RE2 Remake came out. That game was pretty fucking good. This, I feel like I'm going to be feel very good with my pick long term. So yeah, that's my games of the year.
Hell yes.
Do you have any more that you want to talk about?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I feel like this is a topic that we could probably go on for days about. But I feel like we, probably did justice to the gaming community, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
If not, it is what it is. Come talk to us about it. But I think that, we were pretty fair with our assessments and judgments today, for sure.
Come fight us in a Walmart parking lot.
What is up with you and violence? Not even just
anarchy,
but
burn it to the ground.
But at stores.
Listen,
like you're a big fight me. Not even meet me at Frick. Not even stuff like that. But I'm talking you're into watching YouTube videos of Dollar General fist fights.
No. They're usually what they usually are.
Okay, they're arguments, but
arguments. But because I it's like trash TV to me. Like people, listen. There's people out there who love The Bachelor and The Bachelorette, or they love Love Island, or whatever fucking show you want to watch. Because there's fucking tons of them on Netflix now too. That's my trash TV. That is my comfort. I just love. It makes me feel better about myself. I'm like, man, at least I'm not doing that shit with my life. It makes me feel like, man, at least I'm seeing the worst part of humanity now. I'm doing all right. All these other people in my life, they're doing all right. It's just, I don't know why. It's just, most of them too, because they end up becoming the Oblivion meme that they'll put the music to. But that's mostly why, or they'll be they'll put the guards music on there too. The dun, 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 dun. So, but yeah, I don't know why, man. It's just, if they make me feel better, I think about myself, I don't know, maybe I'll bring that up with my therapist next time. Be like, why am I obsessed with these fucking, Dollar General fight videos?
Why am I the way I am?
Why? Yeah, God, if somebody can tell me that, that's $1 million fucking question. But anyways, Mike, I guess that's going to do it for our Game of the Year discussion this year. Why don't you tell people where they can find you on the internet, talk about everything we talked about today, all of our Games of the Year. Where can people find you to get the 411 on everything?
You can find me on Twitter at TOYSXLDIER. That's Toy Soldier, and the second O is an X. Or you can find me on Twitch at MP_Toy Soldier.
Nice. And as always, I'm your host, Travis White, aka Travelus on most internet platforms, including at Travelus_ on Twitter. That's TRAVLESS_. You can also find me streaming time to time on twitch.tv/Travelus_, same as Twitter. And want to play some video games with me over on Xbox Live, you can do so at regular old Travis, or Steam as well, or any other platform. I'm Travis on everything now, so you can do that at just TRAVLESS, no underscore. And this, ladies and gentlemen, has been your newest Game of the Year special episode of the Game Pass Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox Game Pass, and of course, PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversation around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop Friday mornings on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So be sure to subscribe to us, rate us, review us, all that jazz wherever you get a podcast at. And follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games and our dope giveaways. And Mike, that's going to do it for our episode this week. Thank you everyone so much for listening, sharing, and being a part of our growing community. Game on, wash your hands, listen to the doctors. Black Lives Matter, and we will see you next week.